Hi, my name is Greg Canty, and I'd like to welcome you to the Win Happy podcast. I love chatting to people from all walks of life about their lives and their careers, about the choices they make along the way to pursue their happiness, and what winning actually means to them. I hope you enjoy these conversations as much as I do. Thanks for listening. On today's podcast, I chat with Dawn Russell, the amazing CEO of Ana Liffey. Dawn, a huge music lover, is originally from a small town in Tipperary, and her social conscience was awoken through her mother's work at St.Lukes, a psychiatric hospital in Tipperary, and meeting a character in Clonmel called Martin, who she says always looked out for her. Her eyes were opened when she came to Dublin to pursue a career in counselling and discovered the harm reduction work that Merchants Quay were doing in the city. When Dawn joined the frontline team at Ana Liffey over 19 years ago, she quickly found herself assisting people at their lowest ebb through addiction, homelessness, mental health or domestic violence issues. Always pushing for change and a desire to make even more impact, she rose to the role as CEO, now oversees the provision of services to 5,000 clients per annum in Dublin, Balbriggan and LImerick. Dawn says you must believe in everyone, even when they have stopped believing in themselves. Never give up and never judge. Let's hear from Dawn. Dawn Russell, a colossal welcome to the Win Happy podcast. How are you doing?
Great, thank you, Greg. Yeah, great. Feeling good.
That's good. So you're the CEO of Ana Liffey.
I am indeed.
For many people, they'll know all about the organisation, or they'll have an idea. But from my conversations with you, I know the reality is quite different to what people might imagine. And for some people then, they'll have never at all have heard about Ana Liffey and who you are and what you do and all that kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
But before we get to all of that, I'd like the listeners to get to know you a little bit before we start talking about the role that you have and the work that you do and all that kind of thing. So a very simple question. Who the hell are you and where did you come from?
Simple question. I'll try and give a simple answer. I'll narrow myself down. So I came from a dairy farm in rural Tipperary. That's the best way to start. A very, very isolated farm. Lovely upbringing in, freedom to run around the fields with the cows and all of that. And then in my teens, I moved to a town in Tipperary called Clonmel, which I love. I really love Clonmel. And I suppose it really inspired me to get into the career that I did get into, because it's a great, beautiful town with great people. And it also suffers an awful lot from social harms, such as addiction and poverty. But a mighty place, but definitely some seeds were sown when I was growing up there that led me to where I am now. And really, I definitely try hard to separate what I do for my job from who I am as a person, but it gets hard. I've been in the Ana Liffey for 19 years, so a big part of who I am is Ana Liffey, and it is our mission and what we do.
Can you separate who you are from what you do you think?
At times, when I should. It's called boundaries and it's good for the staff and good for the clients. At times when I should, but you know what, Greg, I also indulge in the fact that I really love my job and I love where I work and I love the people. And so I invite that in a bit to my personality and the who I am as well. I definitely don't have hard lines where I'll never talk about my job if I'm at a party, or I don't introduce it to people as part of who I am, because it very much is. But it's lovely when I'm walking in the hills in Howth at the weekend, and when I'm out with my friends, I'm also not thinking about my job then. So I put it down when I need to.
So if we unplugged Ana Liffey from Dawn, would you be like, oh my God, I'm at sea here, I have no idea who I am or what I'm doing?
I would be seeking the next opportunity to serve marginalised communities is exactly what I'd be doing. I'd be finding my next space where I could make an impact.
So in a way, it is really part of who you are, isn't it? It serves that in so many ways.
Yeah, it is. And I think I've often thought over the years, as you should, what else would I do if I wasn't working for Ana Liffey? And my answers are always find a place that's like Ana Liffey and has a similar mission and serves similar communities and tries to do good. So why move?
So growing up on a farm in Tipperary, was that the only income in the household? Because I know a lot of farmers, they might do a bit of other. Was your mum working, or was she involved in the farm as well?
Yes, my mum had a couple of jobs and was involved in the farm. Like a lot of rural women, she wore many, many hats and is still in great strength. Mum's 85 and still living in Tipperary. So she worked nights in a psychiatric hospital. She was an operator on the main switchboard, which I suppose a lot of your listeners won't have a clue what that means. But for anyone of my vintage or older, it means that she connected all the communication in the hospital. And she also worked the farm and was just a very active part of my life and still is. So very inspirational woman.
Is the farm a business, would you say?
It should be and can be. And certainly, for anyone who's listening who runs a farm, they'll know that it can be a very difficult business. Like ours was small, an inherited farm, and I think it was more of a labour of love and a getting by. We definitely, I made friends with all the cows. And then they would, go off and come back repackaged differently and go into our freezer. But it was kind of about keeping our family going and then making a little income. But Mum really was the breadwinner in our family. And interestingly enough, she, I was born in 1985, so she was back in work by the time I was born. But she would have been one of the women who had to leave her job when she got married because she worked, for the state and was only able to re-enter work in 73. So, just watching her make ends meet before she was, able to kind of build her career again was interesting.
And, the fact that it is a mini business and the family depends on it for an income. Would you have been aware of, it's a good year or it's a bad year or the weather's very bad and that's going to impact our incomes? Even as a kid, would that penny have dropped with you, literally?
Definitely. I am the youngest of three and my sisters are a decent bit older than me, so 8 years and 12 years. So I kind of almost had an only child experience and I was always digging in. I was helping my father get the cows into the cattle crush because we didn't have automated milking in the 90s, and I was helping Mum with the bales of hay. So I knew what work was, and I knew that you had to work hard to keep things ticking over. We always had what we needed, but we never had extra, if you know what I mean. But that was fine. I remember Christmases where we were out working the farm before we got to Santee. I remember one Christmas where it was really stormy and the roof flew off the shed. It had been given up for a long time, but it flew off this one Christmas, and helping my mum and my dad kind of sort that out. So, that reality that you always have to be working alongside your life was instilled in me very young.
So Dawn, I presume that's 7 days a week.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, you get into calving season and then it seems to be more than 24 hours a day. You're up all hours. Now, having said that, I was protected from an awful lot. I always went to school and I got to live my little child life, but you're on all the time. And it is kind of a vocation. I think any good farmer and farming family, they love their animals. They really love them and they take care of them and they feed them properly and they nurture them. And then we do what we do on a farm to make ends meet as well. But that kind of living your work was definitely what I grew up in.
And we're recording this during the summer and most people are thinking about where we're going to go on our summer holidays. They probably have it all booked and everything. I presume on a farm you can just forget about that, can you?
Oh, yeah. We did day trips to a lovely place called Tramore in Waterford, which many people will probably know. And you'd go down to the beach for the day and you'd have your ham sandwiches out of the back of the car like every good Tipperary family and then back up. We didn't do the foreign holiday thing. But you know what, Greg? I am only 41, so I'm ridiculously young. But sometimes when I talk about growing up, it sounds like it was a different era altogether. You didn't think about foreign holidays. You were delighted to be off school and have the whole summer stretching ahead of you and to be able to have the freedom of, myself and my best friend used to just go off down the fields and check out fairy forts and hopping across streams, and you didn't want to be anywhere else. You just wanted to do that and then come back starving in the evening and have a big feed, nothing lacking.
And tell me, what were the conversations at the kitchen table in your house?
Um, what were the conversations? Well, I was always, because I was kind of an only child with two. My parents were a bit older having me. They had me in their mid-40s, and my dad would have been closer to 50. So it's kind of like they were having conversations and I was having a fantasy in my head, if you know what I mean. I had an imaginary world going on and was always playing Take That in the background. So I think my parents kind of indulged me a lot to live out my little life.
You were the young mad thing.
I wasn't engaging with them at the same level now. If you can imagine two parents in their mid-50s trying to raise a 10-year-old, you're connecting on a different level. But, you know, there was always GAA on the wireless. I really am making myself sound old now, but that is what we called it. So that was the lovely sounds of GAA and horse racing in the background. And Mum always doing 17 things. Like, really, my mother is phenomenal. She was always cooking and organising things and getting ready to go to work and looking after me, multitasking all over the place. So she is really my primary prevailing memory of my childhood, because she was ever present and always trying to entertain me when I'm sure she could be doing with the rest.
And as a young woman growing up, a young girl, and you're sitting in school or you're daydreaming at home and your head goes to wherever, where would your head go? What were you dreaming of?
What was I dreaming of? Boys, the future, silly things, fluffy things, you know. I think I'm a huge fan of music. Unfortunately, I couldn't carry a note in a bucket and I can't play any instruments, but music is really my life. Like, I've always got it playing. So I would always be daydreaming about bands, concerts, where I'd go when I was older, when I was old enough to buy tickets and travel, and, you know, would I go to Glastonbury, all of those things. And always boys. I went to a convent school, an all-girls convent school, which was a lovely experience, but it's the exact trigger to just thinking about boys all day long. If they're sitting beside you in the class, I think you get over it. But when you're waiting for that lunch break to go downtown and see whoever you're going to see. But yeah, and I think just that all of us know that experience of being a teenager and trying to fit in and figure yourself out, and the social awkwardness, and do I look okay, and is what I'm saying okay. So unfortunately 90% of my headspace was probably filled up with myself and how I was bringing myself forward in the world, you know.
What's the best gig you've ever been to?
Best gig I've ever been to is Foo Fighters. I've been to Foo Fighters many times. I've got a Foo Fighters tattoo as well. One of my best friends and myself have a matching tattoo. But one of my great friends, Eddie, who's still living in Clonmel, we went to see Foo Fighters in London and we're massive fans. And we had these nosebleed tickets, but we just got on with it. We had the pints. I do enjoy a pint, and we were dancing, and very early into their set, this PR woman came up and tapped us on the shoulder and said, do you want to move to the VIP area? Because, you know, we know at gigs they're often corporate seats and the VIP area can be a bit empty or flat. So we got moved down to under Dave Grohl, the lead singer of Foo Fighters, his nose. And it was one of the best nights of my life. And we headed off then to a tattoo shop at some point in the wee hours and got our matching Foo Fighters tattoos and woke up with very sore arms and sore heads. But, you know, it's just one of those, please God, I'll remember that in my 80s when I'm looking back. Great night.
Yeah, there's a fantastic band in Cork called Ruby Horse. They were quite big in the 80s. They went to the States, they charted top 30 and all that kind of thing. And they have a great song, and there's a line in it about getting a 2 a.m. tattoo. So,
oh, right.
Yeah, I'll have to send you a link to that song. It's a gorgeous song. The song is called I Want to Get Lost. I think you got lost that night.
Oh, I think our tattoos might have happened around 5 a.m. in Bethnal Green. But, you know, as a good harm reduction worker, I was doing my due diligence about clean needles and all that. But, it's just, there's nothing like being at a concert. Like, that would definitely be if I could only do one thing in life to ever enjoy myself, it would just be going to live music. It's just really transformational.
My favourite gig, I have two. So I saw Thin Lizzy when I was 13 in the City Hall in Cork.
Wow.
And to this day, you know, Phil Lynott at his prime, I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. And a couple of years ago, Roger Waters from Pink Floyd, who played the O2 or the 3 Arena, or I'm not even sure what it's called now. It was just mind-blowing. I was a bit like you, going to all the gigs, Monsters of Rock and all that kind of thing. So yeah, we're kindred spirits, Dawn.
Getting to see Phil Lynott like that is a gift in life.
Amazing. Yeah, I saw him a few times.
Wow.
Even when Thin Lizzy finished, he did a little tour. I think it was the last time he toured with a band he called Grand Slam.
Okay, did not know that.
And they came to Sir Henry's in Cork, a real low-key gig. It was clear that he was at a particular stage in his life and everything else who we're talking to.
Yeah.
But he was amazing. He was amazing.
And such a short life, but it makes it even more special then, what he did achieve and the people who did get to see him, because so few people got to see him in comparison to what he could have done. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of, God rest him, Christy Dignam. Huge fan of Aslan when Christy Dignam was fronting them. And he really is one of the ones who got to live a relatively long life, considering all of the health battles he had. But I always feel privileged that I got to see him so many times, because when they're gone, they're gone. And they're legends.
Yeah, totally. If you've had a particularly stressful day and you come in the door at home, you need to leave off a bit of steam and you hit the music, what would you play?
Oh, I would play Green Day, my ride or die band that hopefully would be played at my funeral. Green Day, I would blast a bit of Green Day, early 1990s East Bay punk. There's a song called She, which is a super feminist song. If anyone listening knows Green Day, the lead singer, Billy Joe Armstrong, is a massive feminist, fantastic guy. I've got him tattooed to me as well. There's a theme emerging here, Greg. But yeah, he's got a great song, She, written from a feminist perspective. And it really is, it's uplifting. And it's also a reminder of all the good people in the world, that a young punk in his 20s was thinking from a feminist perspective in the 90s and writing songs like that. So that's what I do.
I don't know that song. I must listen to it.
Oh, it's lovely.
And if you're in top spirits and you're like, oh my God, I'm top of the world today, what do you hit play on?
Oh, take that. Take that, my childhood. My childhood loves.
Foo Fighters to Take That. Come on, Dawn. Where have you gone on me?
There's no such thing as a guilty pleasure, Greg, so I don't hide any of mine. Take that. Gary Barlow, inspirational man as well. I doubt you have read his memoir, but you should. A great guy, but Take That. They were my first melody. So they were the first people who introduced song to me when I was 9 years old, I think. So they are like part of my DNA now. So I'd whack on Take That, anything, Gary Barlow. They have a song called The Greatest Day, which is a huge hit, so I think most people know it, and it's just really uplifting. So,
yeah, I actually think he's an incredible songwriter. Yeah, I have a solo album, which I think is incredible. And I know actually there's a beautiful song in it. My daughter would ask me to stop playing it.
Wow.
And she'd say, that's a sad song, Dad. Can you stop playing it? She could feel the emotion in it.
He's a very deep person.
Yeah, I could hear it in my head. Yeah, she did read his book, believe it or not. But
did you? Oh my God, yeah. You and me, just you and me then in Ireland. That's right.
Yeah.
That's it.
He did a gig in the INAC in Killarney a couple of years ago. And a few of us went to it. And I assumed Gary Barlow, surely it's not going to be a full band or anything. And I think what he did was he used the gig as a rehearsal for a big world tour or something.
Amazing.
It was the full band, the full experience. Actually, it was an incredible gig.
He is phenomenal. Oh, I'm delighted you like him. Because it is, look, it's not cool to say you're a massive Gary Barlow fan, is it? But I am. Amazing songwriter, but also, as you know from reading the book, really honest, and he's had to work maybe a bit harder than people might think to keep himself going, and he's had hardship. But he's just beautiful melody. His voice is fantastic. I'm going to see them in the Aviva the first weekend in July, and I'll never get sick of seeing Take That. Hopefully I'll be floating along on a cruise ship watching them in my 70s, and they'll just stick with me.
Brilliant. So the young woman who loves her music, you're in the farm, you need to start thinking about a life for yourself and what you want to do, and where this kind of social conscience starts creeping into you. Can you talk me through all of that?
Yes, yeah. So I would have had, I don't know, the lucky opportunity. Was it fate? Was I just lucky to get to know a man in my hometown of Clonmel? So I would have been, in my teenage years, obviously doing all the naughty things that you hope your teenager isn't doing, and going off and sneaking off and drinking in fields and all those things you do growing up in the country. You have to do it. It's a rite of passage. Well, you don't have to do it, actually, and people maybe shouldn't, but I did. And it was all grand, and I was always safe, thank God. But getting home from, so I actually, Clonmel is my town, but we live in a little village outside Clonmel where my mum still lives called Kilsheelan, which is lovely. So to get back to Kilsheelan after a night of revelry was hard. And I'd be waiting for a taxi maybe, and there was a lovely man called Martin, I think he's passed now, who used to be homeless in the town, or at least he was never in his home if he had one. He seemed to sleep rough. He seemed to have an alcohol problem. I was 15 or 16, so I probably didn't really understand fully what was going on for him, because that's not part of my family background. I had no lived experience of that. But he used to kind of hang around and sleep and have a cigarette where I'd be waiting for my taxi. And over a couple of years, he was just always there to chat to, very kind, would always look out for me, would always be sensible and have the wherewithal to look out for me when maybe some of my friends weren't able to, because we were all in the same boat. And then I'd kind of start to look forward to having a chat with him, and I'd maybe have a pack of cigarettes and share a cigarette with him, which you shouldn't do as well when you're a kid. But I don't know, he just left a lasting impression on me. And on some immature level, I really just felt a massive amount of empathy and didn't know what to do or what one could do or should do, or how do people who are as good as he is get into this situation and, more importantly, get out of it. And then when I was in school, I really didn't know tangibly what to do. The Leaving Cert was looming. The whole college thing was happening. And I had fantasized so much about things that weren't a career that I hadn't figured out what to do as a career. And one of my friends said to me, "Oh, you should be a counsellor. You're really good at listening to people and supporting people." And that evolved then into me heading off to do a social care degree in Dublin when I left school. So yeah, the rest followed. But definitely Martin and my friends in school giving advice, other people really kind of reflected me back to me maybe, and pointing out the things that they thought were my strengths.
Yeah, and that Martin character, I think we all see a Martin in our respective towns.
Yeah.
And for the most part, you're probably told to just avoid him or avoid her. Sometimes, obviously, they're looking for money and all that kind of thing. They might be a bit unpleasant in some ways, you know. There's a particular character I know that we used passing Oliver Plunkett Street. God almighty, the smell. Your instinct, and maybe a lot of people's instincts, and maybe you're told by your parents or whatever, just avoid that character, avoid those characters, walk to the other side, don't engage with them. That wasn't you, obviously. Were you unusual, do you think, or did everyone talk to Martin?
Not many people talked to Martin, you know. I suppose he looked like the stereotype that we probably all have in our heads right now, you know, and he always had a bit of drink on him, and, you know, I suppose would have begged in the town as well and be looking for money from people. Now, he never, obviously, he saw some little 15-year-old in front of him. He wasn't trying to ask me for money. He was trying to look out for me. But I think I've thought about this over the years. When my mom was working in the psychiatric hospital, there would be some nights where she would need to take me in to work to look after me, because there was nobody at home to look after me and I was too small. And I would be in her little office, and the patients would be coming in and out of the office. There would be some, obviously, patients in the psych hospital who needed to kind of be locked down a little bit more, for want of a nice way of saying it, because they might have been high risk. But there was an awful lot of people in that hospital. It was St.Lukes in Clonmel, who really just had intellectual disabilities, actually, upon reflection, or might have had other vulnerabilities that people didn't understand, and they ended up in a psychiatric hospital when they probably shouldn't have been there. So they would walk around more freely and chat to the staff. And I would have interacted with a lot of those patients when I was very young. And my mother would have always encouraged me to see them as people, because they are. But, you know, I don't think she was purposely trying to coach me to have empathy. I think she was just stating the facts of the world to me. You know, don't be afraid of these people. Obviously, mind yourself, have boundaries. She taught me all that. But she also taught me how to not fear people who society do kind of stigmatise or tend to veer away from. And on some level, that must have instilled in me an openness that when I was 15 and drinking in town, with my mother not in sight and not knowing where I was, I still minded myself, because fortunately I never had any bad experiences, but was able to be open. And I think, you know, instilling that in me very, very young has really kind of helped and opened up doors. Because my first instinct is to be curious and to talk to people while minding myself. But, you know, you lose out a lot on the world if you don't do that, I think.
And in a way, was that the beginning of your social care degree? That didn't happen in college? when 19 or whatever, it happened with your mother in that particular psychiatric unit, St.Lukes, you were saying?
Yes, and it probably took me 20 years to realise that, and my family. It's not like, we don't have these stories in my family of how we got to where we are. We're just like, great, you're doing grand, good, you can pay the bills, great, you're okay, everyone okay. But yeah, I think probably well into my career in the Ana Liffey, somebody asked me what got you into it. And as you get older, you do get to know yourself on different levels. And I did think further back than college, and I thought about Martin and thought about the psychiatric hospital, and I was like, well, that's obviously why. And that's probably what led me to have the, I suppose, style of being that led my school friends to say, oh, you should do counselling. All of that kind of being open and having opportunities to talk to different people. And also, in St.Lukes, a big dominant diagnosis was schizophrenia. And I would have known that then. My mother would have explained that to me then. She never stigmatized mental health. It was just a fact of life, and she'd explain it. And when you are engaging with somebody who has schizophrenia, you engage on it in a different level, because sometimes you're speaking with somebody who is having parallel conversations with other people who aren't there. And as much as that doesn't sound like a good thing for a child to be doing, I was always supervised by mum, and I'd be having those conversations. And it just became normal to me that you would be chatting to people who are on a different level to you sometimes. And that's okay. You don't need to shy away from it. Just sit with it and be okay with it. That's just a fact of life.
Was that more than a job for your mum, do you think? Or was it just the job she happened to be doing that paid the bills? Do you know what I mean?
It was more than a job. She would have, I think definitely it started off as paying the bills, because that's what you have to do. But I remember, mum used to be allowed, with permission from the hospital, to bring certain patients out to the farm at weekends for day release, I suppose. So there was a couple of patients who had no family and would never be taken out and had no trips, and mum would bring them and have lunch with them in the garden on the Saturday and then drive them back in. So she definitely took more time and went outside of her job role to just be kind to people.
So you obviously would have met them on the Saturdays when your mum brought them to the house and what have you.
Yeah, they're then just part of your life, Then I'm running around with the dog playing, and I'm like, oh, there's herself from St.Lukes. And yeah, of course she's having tea with mum. It was seamless, made sense.
So in a way then it made sense for you, the 15-year-old, thinking it was nothing out of the ordinary at all to be chatting to Martin.
Yeah. No othering, as a term that we're probably used to now. There was never really any othering. There was, mind yourself, be wary of people, have boundaries, use your smarts, don't get into white vans, which were a big thing, unfortunately, in the 90s. But it was never avoid these types of people. The advice I was given and taught and role modelled was avoid dangerous people. But dangerous people can look and sound like lots of different things. So not necessarily people who are homeless or people with intellectual disabilities. They're not dangerous necessarily.
Yeah. And that degree course you were doing in social care and the experience of that and deciding what you were going to do with that qualification. Can you chat to me about that?
Yes. I went to, it was called DIT, and now it's TU, Dublin, on Mountjoy Square. So back when I went to college in 2004, we didn't have a campus in DIT. It was split up all across the city, Ainger Street, Mountjoy Square. So the social care degree was on Mountjoy Square, which is really supported to be a much better area now. But at the time, it was very disadvantaged, and there would have been a lot of overcrowded apartment blocks and families trying to survive in a big park, where there was a lot of people who slept rough and drank in that park, actually, as well, across from the college. So the course was great. It really was great. It probably at the time wasn't as geared towards working for people who are homeless or have addiction. That's evolved now. I did a couple of times think, oh, geez, I've landed in the wrong course. I did the wrong thing, because there wasn't really any specific course to work with people who had addiction or homeless problems. But it was more, I suppose, coming up from the sticks, landing in the middle of Mountjoy Square, living in Drumcondra, where all the students live, but then navigating the city as part of my college course. And we did placements. So I would have, none of my placements are in addiction. It was disabilities or youth reach, all really good placements. But I had to navigate the city to get to those places. So I started just kind of learning more about social disadvantage and social harms through literally living in the city. The course taught me a lot, but living in Dublin city centre probably taught me just as much, to be honest, over those years, and reinforced what I wanted to do. But again, like, I had no idea. There was no goalpost for this. Like, nobody, everyone in my family has different jobs and careers. We're all quite different from one another in a good way. But I didn't really know how to get to where I wanted to go. And a friend of mine from the college course, Cuiva, was going on a site visit to this place called Merchants Quay, Ireland, and I didn't know what it was, and I think I just wanted to go with her because she was my friend. So I was like, I'll go to that thing, whatever that is. And off we went down to this place on the quays in Dublin called Merchants Quay, Ireland. And there was a man in there who still works there called Alan Dooley, who was explaining this thing called harm reduction to us bunch of students in second year in social care, and how, you know, harm reduction is about engaging with people while they're in their active addiction or while they're in domestic violence. And they were doing something called needle exchange, where you're giving people clean syringes to inject with. And this was blowing my mind. It was around 2004, 2005. And that was a key change for me, listening to Alan that day. And I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I don't want to be a counsellor. No disrespect to counsellors. We have great counsellors on our staff. I don't want to be rehabilitative. I want to work with people who are in the thick of it. And the harms are happening to them right now. And I want to be one of the people on the front line reducing harm and supporting them to get into services. So Alan really inspired me that day. And it was totally per chance. I think I was meant to be going somewhere else. I think I was in a different group for a different visit, but it sounded boring. And I just was like, oh, if I go down here with Cuiva, we might have a pint afterwards. And that's how I ended up in Merchants Quay, listening to Alan. Literally.
Yeah. Again, using those words, harm reduction. What did he mean precisely?
So what he meant, and it's what Merchants Quay do and do very well, was designing interventions to support people to be safer, whatever that means for them, whatever harm is happening to them. At the time, it was addiction we were talking about. So accepting that people, before they might change their drug use, will be using drugs. And addiction isn't something you can just stop tomorrow. So let's help them be safer. Let's make sure that they don't get bloodborne viruses like hepatitis or HIV. Let's make sure they don't injure themselves using syringes that are old or broken. And reducing harm and keeping people as happy and healthy and safe as you can while they're in their active addiction, so that when they are ready to move on from that, they're a healthier person. A lot of harm can be done when you're in the throes of addiction that you can't shed if and when you get into recovery. And that's what he meant. And he was talking about bringing people in and accepting people no matter where they were at in their journey of homelessness or addiction, not discriminating, not needing people to be motivated to change in order to start working with them. And that is harm reduction. You meet people where they're at, whatever their problems are, whatever their motivation to change is, whatever their ability to change is, you don't judge any of it. You just start with them from the first step that they take towards you.
Okay. So when we think about, I'm going to be a bit coarse now, you think about these druggies that we see everywhere. Sometimes we see antisocial stuff, people scrapping on the street. The story that we tell ourselves, you know, that they're a whole drug-crazed lunatics, this, that and the other. They should all be locked up, you know. That might be one story that we tell ourselves.
Of course.
But yet then you've got a crew here who accept people in that window of their life, whatever's going on, extreme things. Obviously, what they're doing is illegal and all that kind of good stuff.
Yes.
And yet then we're going to, one, look at them in a particular way, that while they're doing that thing, obviously there's the worry, and the real worry that they might do damage to other people, whatever, robbing or maybe attacking someone. That's the story you tell yourself. But Merchants Quay and people like yourselves, they go, no, you need to mind that individual and reduce the possibility of them doing harm to themselves. That's effectively what you're talking about, isn't it?
Absolutely. People have value and potential at every stage of their existence. That's the thing. And to work in somewhere like Ana Liffey or Merchants Quay, you need to really believe that, because it is true. And it helps that I see so much recovery. I'm surrounded by recovery every day, both on the staff team and in the client group. So I know it to be true. But you need to believe that people have potential every day. So it is worth starting the work of change with someone, no matter what, no matter where they're at, no matter what their behaviours are. sometimes dangerous things happen to people in addiction, and sometimes people in addiction do things to other people that are dangerous. So we can't be too naive about it either. I wouldn't be encouraging people who aren't maybe trained to jump into a bunch of people that they meet on the street who might be arguing about drugs. That's the guard's job and that's our job. But I work with people now, and my team do, who are surviving every day by doing things that they are not happy to be doing, that are not safe for society, not safe for them. But at the same time, they will be meeting up with us and working on their treatment plans. They'll be beginning a course with us. They'll be beginning to reduce their use. So those two things have to actually exist in parallel for a period of time until change really kicks in. You are going to remain, and it's similar across all social harms. If you think of having an eating disorder and trying to recover from that, there will be a period of time where you're still in the throes of the behaviours of an eating disorder while you are actually really working on your therapeutic process to move from it. And what Ana Liffey believe is that at that moment, when both things are happening in parallel, you need to be working with that person. You can't wait for them to be on the road to recovery before you intervene.
You mentioned eating disorders, and we kind of understand that, and you would be sympathetic towards it. I think even now, with that better understanding of alcoholism and all that kind of thing, we know and we understand it, and I think we're kind of sympathetic about it. But for some reason, we really look at the druggies,
yes,
with a different mindset. And I think when people would hear and listen to what the likes of Merchants Quay do and Ana Liffey, some people would really struggle to understand, what are you doing? They might even go as far to say, you're actually helping this gang. What are you at? Do you come across that? Do you come across that attitude towards people like that and the work that you would do?
Absolutely. And I empathise with it. Addiction is one of the more frightening things for any society. We're afraid of the people, and we're also afraid it might happen to us or someone we love. Maybe not us, but maybe someone we love. So we want to keep it over there so that it doesn't become part of our lives. And because it's terrifying and it's complicated. And often people will say, why don't you just do rehab? Why doesn't Ana Liffey do rehab beds and get people into rehab? And because it's really valuable. People want to skip straight to the bit where people are getting better. And I get that. I really get that. And we do community detox, and we do have programs to help people reduce their use and become drug free. And we do have recovery programs, and we also have harm reduction programs, because you have to have services that can meet different people at different points in their journey. Harm reduction is good for society. If we're reducing bloodborne viruses in the people that we work for in the Ana Liffey, that's good for population health. Not to get too scientific or boring about it, but that is good for all of community. We saw that during COVID. We did a huge amount of work with our clients during COVID with the help of the HSE and Dublin and Limerick City Councils to make sure that COVID rates were very, very low among the homeless community and community people who use drugs. And we saw that had a positive impact on the wider communities. Diseases being transmitted, whatever the reason they're being transmitted, is bad for the public. So harm reduction does a really good service to public health. And it's also about building self-esteem. When you intervene with someone, and when they allow you to intervene with them when they're at their lowest, the job is to build up their self-esteem and their personal capital so that they can stand up and start walking with you towards their recovery. And it works. We do lose people to overdose. We lose people to suicide. We lose people to chronic diseases. A lot of the people we work for might have a lot of complex diseases, diabetes, COPD, untreated. And that's a lot to do with poverty and marginalisation. And we lose people to that. But we also have recovery, and we also have people who go on to live full lives. And there's a science to addiction. And this is the thing. I think the public look at addiction, and I understand it, as really confusing and frightening, and there's no answer to it. There's no reason why, and there's no way out. But there is a reason why. There's a huge evidence base to why people get involved with addiction. Trauma, genetics, there's a medical model of addiction, there's a social model of addiction, and they're all true. So there's different routes in for people. It's not one reason why people end up in addiction. And there is a science to recovery. There's a science to helping people recover their lives, and harm reduction is part of that. So there is a solution, there is a science to it, but I can understand that from the outside, it's not as simple as maybe other social harms. For example, if somebody is sleeping rough, it's understandable that you need to give that person a home, and that will be the problem fairly well solved with maybe some supports going in. But you look at someone who is, acting out on the street. I'm sure many of the listeners will have seen this because addiction is in every community. You might see someone who is stoned on the street and nodding off with their knees down to their nose down to their knees. Or you might see someone who seems to be in psychosis and having a kind of a mental break. And you might think, oh, maybe that's what crack or crystal meth looks like. When you look at that, there's not an easy solution that occurs to you apart from put them in a rehab bed. So I get it. We don't judge the attitudes of people who don't work in the services towards our clients, but we do try and change them because it is important to try and reduce stigma and educate people.
And maybe that simple story that I might have in my head about, druggies, thugs, scumbags, whatever, that's kind of compounded in ways by the things you might read in the newspapers and everything else. Does it distress you when you hear people being depicted in that way, across media? Or is it an understandable thing, and a bit like me and whoever, Joe Public, to the journalists who are also just everyday people, they probably need that better understanding as well, I presume.
I understand why. Safety is everyone's key concern in their community, right? Before you can care about other people, you have to make sure that you're okay and your family are okay. And when we see the headlines and when we see, especially drug gang related crime, which is very, very different to people suffering with addiction. That's a different phenomenon altogether. That's a business, that is making money off the backs of people's addiction. But when we see these headlines about stabbings or people injecting publicly, it's completely understandable that the first instinct is fear. But there are some members of the media who do a really good job at explaining and empathizing and not just blaming vulnerable people while also reporting on drug-related crime. Brian O'Connell is a particular person I think of who always balances facts with empathy as well. And I think more can be done with more media outlets to maybe give a deeper understanding. I find Irish society deeply compassionate. I think we're going through a really difficult time globally with people's attitudes towards marginalised people. Same in Ireland, we're seeing spikes of right-wing activism. But in general, I find Irish people very compassionate and very able to understand nuance and depth once they're given that information. And our clients are very brave. They put their stories out there and they put their recovery stories out there. And I think those stories need to go out there as well as stories which do educate communities about crime and safety, because it is important. You can't hide that stuff either.
Do you know, Dawn, having worked with Ana Liffey for 19 years?
Yes.
I might have expected the person I'm chatting to be a bit jaded and a bit cynical by all of this. And it's none of that. I'd nearly say it's the opposite. Tell me about Merchant's Quay to Ana Liffey.
Well, so here we go now. The theme of me being a kind of a disorganised chancer really runs through all of this, Greg. But anyway, so sat with Alan, was inspired by him. And then I had a path then. I knew what I wanted to do. I just didn't know how to get there yet again. And I was coming up to finishing the degree and I knew I'd get a degree and it was all good. And I saw an ad in the paper because that's where job ads were.
On a Friday.
Oh my God, I saw an ad in the paper and it was some place called the Ana Liffey Drug Project and something. I didn't really understand the ad, but the phrase harm reduction was in the job ad. And I was like, oh. And there was eligibility criteria to apply. So I sent in my CV. I didn't really meet the eligibility criteria. I also didn't have a degree yet because I was still in college. And I was called for an interview. I think the social care degree pending was really helpful. And I was creative with my work experience on my CV. Probably brought in a bit of my stuff with Martin and some of my experiences and framed them as work experiences. And got the interview and was equally creative in the interview about my tangible experiences, but was honest about my attitudes and my, way that I would like to work with people. And I got a job as a case manager. Drug and Homeless Case Manager was the title in 2007. And Ana Liffey very kindly, and we can still do this today in circumstances, very kindly said, look, you haven't graduated yet, but here's a firm offer of employment. Once you get your degree, we'll sign a contract with you. And if you don't get your degree, you're fired. So, which is fair enough. So I started in Ana Liffey. I think I just turned 22, working on the front line. At the time, we had a big, busy, bouncy drop-in the North Inner City where people could rock up and come in no matter where they were at, as we discussed earlier. And then myself and my colleagues would get to work trying to support them to be safer. We also did outreach. And for some reason, which seems ridiculous to me now, but it did work out in the end, I was given a job of working with the most complex cases. So I think my job at the time in 2007 was a pilot to see if you handed 20 of the most complex cases to a case manager and got them to focus on them, would it get good outcomes? So that's what they handed to me, which really seems silly because I had zero experience, but it was great. It was in at the deep end. And I started working with people then. When I say complex cases, I actually hate that term, but it's people who have been around a long while and have multiple coexisting issues, and people who have been barred by other agencies or given up on by other agencies through their behaviours usually, or through their inability to change. So that was my caseload when I was 22.
So that these are the no-hopers, the last chance saloon. We have no idea what to do with this gang. So
barred from everywhere.
Yeah, we've got this young thing from Tipperary who's full of beans. Let's throw the whole bloody lot of the matter. What did you learn, and was it a colossal shock to the system?
Well, first of all, Greg, I learned all the technical sides of drug use because I had no idea about that. I did grow up in a town where drug use was happening. So I grew up around a lot of party scene drug use and a lot of heroin use in Clonmel, but I wasn't privy to any of that. So working with my clients, they taught me the ABCs, of drug use. They talked me through it, injecting. I had to educate myself. So look, everybody knew how green I was, I'd say. And you have to be humble about that and just say, look, I have certain skills that can help you, but I also have a lot of blank canvas stuff going on here. So my clients taught me a lot about drug using culture, I suppose, for want of a better way of saying it, and the hardships that they were enduring. And then we just stepped together through their care plans. But I learned to listen. I learned to have tough empathy. And I think that's something that is important, to have boundaries while empathizing and to push people forward while not pushing them at such a speed that you're going to harm them or hurt them. But to have fierce aspirations for people and articulate them to the people that you're working for, there is a lot of work that can be done where you're meeting people where they're at, but you're almost lowering the bar and you don't have standards for them. And when somebody is not feeling that they have any potential or hope, you have to have a standard for them. You have to have vision for them and breathe that into them. So I learned that a lot working with that crew of people in my 20s, just to not give up on them and keep showing them that even when they gave up on themselves, I would follow. And my colleagues all did that in the Ana Liffey. Somebody wouldn't show up. They were meant to meet you for a coffee, so you'd go rooting around all the alleyways in the North Inner City to find them till you found them. And when you did find them, and they got the look of panic in their eyes, and, oh God, geez, sorry, no, I was meant to be in it. And you're just, it's absolutely fine. We're here now. Let's go. Let's do it. But you could see in people that they were surprised you'd bothered to go find them.
Could you literally see them transforming with the simple thing that someone isn't giving up on me?
People sit up straighter. They light up a bit more. The shoulders drop. The people we work for in Ana Liffey are expecting judgment from even their case manager. They're expecting to be told all the things they're doing that are wrong and bad, and then how to do them differently. And they're expected to be handed a plan which is to fix them. And we don't do that in Ana Liffey. I didn't do that as a caseworker. We know the things that can help, but there's no point throwing them at someone. What we do is listen and understand and get in under the problem with people and empathise. And we don't judge them. And we don't scold them for the behaviours that are harming themselves. We do point out things they can do that won't harm. If somebody is, for example, begging in a way that might frighten the public, we'll absolutely sit with them and say, look, Greg, sometimes you sit under the ATM begging, and that's really frightening, especially for older people. Could you not do that? And people are so open to that. Our clients are like, oh God, Jesus, no, if that is frightening people, I won't do that.
I never realised, yeah.
Yeah, they kind of feel like they're invisible or that they don't have that impact on people because nobody ever really looks at them. So they don't think that they're even, do you know what I mean? And when you kind of say, no, people are avoiding your eye contact because they're frightened and they're worried about their pain. So it's not that we shy away from the hard stuff, but we understand before we kind of lecture. And I saw when I was a caseworker, and I still see now watching my colleagues do it, people just show up earlier for their appointments. They show up more often. They literally are standing up straighter. And it takes time and it's slow work with some people, but bit by bit you're building blocks of self-esteem and self-efficacy. And you're proving to people that they can trust you. That's the job.
Doing all of that in your different locations, and I know you're in Dublin, Balbriggan, you're in Limerick, you're obviously in this melting pot with people on the streets. Sometimes, and probably a lot of the time, some of the activity mightn't be that legal. They're obviously, some of them are drug using and everything, which I guess technically is illegal. That melting pot with the Gardaí and everything, is there a big fear that, okay, the minute I come through your door for help or assistance, I'm going to be marched in the door of the Gardaí? How do you work with the official Dublin or Limerick, with the Gardaí, with, law enforcement and all that kind of thing? How does that work?
There used to be that fear in the early 2000s. There used to be a fear that drug use would be reported as a crime, or the huge fear that a lot of the people who use our services have is that they'll be reported to TUSLA if they have children, which is a huge barrier for them seeking treatment because they don't want to disclose their drug use in case their kids get taken away from them. But I have to say, Greg, over the years, genuinely, the approach of the guards, the approach of the city councils has really evolved. They still enforce the law, as is their job, or they still uphold their policies, but they have much greater wisdom and empathy about working with victims of addiction or victims of domestic violence or victims of homelessness. And that is how a lot of the members see it. And they will encourage people into help. So we have a model called Law Engagement Assisted Recovery in Ana Liffey, and we roll it across all the areas that we work in. And it's partnership on the front line between us and the guards and us and probation. And probation and Gardaí will help people to come into our service and get our full suite of supports around their needs, rather than go down a criminal justice route as the first route, because they can see that consistently taking someone through a criminal justice system isn't the best way to meet health needs. So the guards will, and they will refer to us. They will meet someone out and about who they might be stopped and searched for drug use. They might have drugs in their pocket, and the guards will quite rightly take the drugs because they are illegal and need to be taken. But they will also then call my colleague Ian, who is the leader of LIR, while they're with that person, say, Ian, I have a lad here, he looks vulnerable, can you come and meet him, or can I bring him up to you? So they will do both things in one time, which, in fairness to the guards, they're doing two jobs in one moment there.
So there's a practical understanding that to deal with this problem, you need to think a little bit differently and work at a very practical level with the likes of Ana Liffey and everything else.
Yeah. I think the system is really evolving. In Ireland now, the Department of Health and the Department of Justice work together on a health-led approach to drug use. So drug use is still illegal. Selling drugs is certainly illegal. But both the Department of Health and Justice understand and have based in policy the difference between running drugs and having drugs on you because you're trying to cope with an addiction. Okay. And they have a system that treats people who are struggling with an addiction in a health-first way. It doesn't mean they can get away with crimes, and I think that's an important thing to point out. It doesn't mean that if one of our clients shoplifts, they get away with shoplifting, because that is a different crime. But it does mean that purely the possession of drugs to cope with, you're given a health response first.
And if this was a movie, every single one of your clients, they're a hardcore drug user and they meet the lovely people in Ana Liffey and you wave your magic wand, you take them step by step, and before you know it, they're married and they have their own house and their own job and they're happy with their 2 children. Does it work like that?
There are those stories, but you know what? Before we even meet them, what they are, and this is important, and I really believe this, and this is why I've been 2 decades in the job, what they are is just people who are really good crack sometimes. So we all have an image of a hardcore drug user, and we've all probably seen too many Tarantino films. I haven't really met many of them over the 20 years. I've met soft lads, vulnerable women, good crack people who are from similar communities and backgrounds to me, people who sometimes look a bit surly when they're meeting you because they're worried about you, but then they soften real fast. So it's not like they are nuts we have to crack. Usually they come in quite soft and squishy and worried and frightened. And that's our starting point. Otherwise, we'd all be running out of the place. We'd be afraid to work with people. And even our clients who do get involved in more serious crime, because sometimes they are groomed into more serious gangland crime and they are doing dangerous things, there is still that human side to them where they're a dad or they're somebody's son and you're chatting to them about the Eurovision as well. So there's multiple sides to people. Recovery can look very different for different people. So for some of the people we work for, they just want to stabilize for now and maybe get emergency accommodation and maybe start a course. And for us, that is a big win. It might seem like a little win to the public, but it's a big win to go from being entrenched in rough sleeping and using crack every day to being able to go on an educational program. For other people, they work with us for a lot of years, they build their recovery capital, they go and they get their degrees and they come back and they work on the team, or they go off and they do other fantastic things that are nothing to do with addiction. But we're privileged in Ana Liffey. We have many people on the team who have lived experience, and we've got a couple of people on the team who've come through the program here and they're fantastic case managers. So we have engagements, we have babies, we have all those beautiful things. So recovery can be a better life than you can imagine. It's not about returning back to where you were before your addiction or your homelessness or your domestic violence. It's about getting to a better place than where you started and having a more full life than you did before.
So from being stuck in the trenches helping your clients to suddenly moving up the ladder and applying for the CEO job so many years later, and them having the wisdom to give that job to you, stepping from the trenches to managerial, why did you do that? And why do you think they chose Don? I have my own ideas about it, but what do you think?
I'd say they were sick of me telling them what to do, and they probably thought, just get her into the seat and get her to do it herself. Look, I suppose I am a very driven, passionate person, and sometimes that comes across as bossy or opinionated or just always trying to push things to be a little bit better. So that's definitely who I was as a caseworker in my 20s, which looking back now I'm really embarrassed about because I didn't know anything, but you think you know everything. So I'd say the organisation looked at me as having a few tangible skills, but a lot of energy and commitment and compassion and ability to adapt. You don't have to know everything. You have to have the willingness to learn it and to apply yourself. But again, and I don't mean to sound like a passive passenger in my life, it was other people. I had a great boss, Rose Toll, who works in an organisation called SAIL now, who works with women in addiction. And when the job ad came up for manager, she very kindly pulled me aside and said, you mightn't think that this is something you should put yourself forward for at this point, but you should. I wasn't thinking about putting myself forward for it. So, she really encouraged me and supported me. And then I was into the competition with everybody else. But if she hadn't said that day to me, I wouldn't have put myself forward. And I don't know really where I'd be. And then I just kept going from there. I realised over the course of my management career that the further I got in management, the more impact I would have on more people. I loved working directly one-to-one with people on the front line, but I realised it could be thousands of people. Like Ana Liffey works with about 5,000 people every year. And in some way, as a senior manager, I can impact on those 5,000 people indirectly. But yeah, it became a different way of seeing how to serve the community, I think.
Okay. That was a good day. That was a good day when they spotted that passion and everything else, and knowledge and expertise. The things you've acquired over that length of time is amazing. I know from chatting to you earlier that the organisation is kind of evolving, and even the name is evolving, and the Ana Liffey Drug Project, I think that was the official name. The Drug Project part now is being unplugged, I think, is it?
It is. In one of our values in Ana Liffey is to be an evolving organisation, but to genuinely be evolving. It's not just words, it's action. So we constantly scope out our environment and what our communities need and evolve to meet those needs. And in the last couple of years, we have really realised that there are people who need our services who don't have any addiction, who are homeless or have mental health problems or are experiencing domestic or gender sexual based violence. And having the title Drug Project made them think that we weren't for them, when of course harm reduction and recovery applies to all of those things as equally as it does to addiction. And also, we've realised that for people who do have addiction problems or drug problems, we can just be the Ana Liffey. Somehow branding ourselves as a drug project can actually be stigmatising because it can turn people off coming in the door. People aren't just their issue. So we've softened the name. Everyone just calls us the Ana Liffey anyway. So we're kind of getting with the times. And we've a new website and a new logo and a new tagline, From Harm to Hope, which really identifies our whole mission, meeting people in harm and bringing them towards hope. And the point of all of that is to really communicate and articulate to a wide expanse of people that we can help you. If your issues aren't exactly what you think we deal with, come to us anyway, because we can either help you directly or we can find you the place to land and the people who can help you. So we work a lot for the migrant community as well, people who've landed in the country and become homeless through falling through the gaps, despite the best efforts of the authorities that are trying to support people to get into direct provision. And they have different needs. They've experienced trauma in different ways. They might use substances or have mental health or PTSD. They might just be very isolated and not know any of their rights. And because we're a frontline service in communities, we come across those people and of course we offer them help.
And that's another dimension to the work that you're doing that wouldn't have been there years ago when you joined. So
the world has evolved, yeah.
Yeah. So when you do have all of those issues, people who are desperately requiring help, and they happen to be black or brown, does that add a huge dimension to everything that you're doing? And does that make it an awful lot more difficult?
It adds a huge dimension to what we're doing. I don't think it makes it more difficult once we are wise. In Ana Liffey, we have purposefully over the years recruited a diverse team of very skilled people. Everyone is well able to do their job, but we've worked hard on making sure that we are not accidentally a white Irish team, and that can happen in organisations unless you focus on diversity and inclusion of people from different backgrounds and ethnicities and different sexual identities. Then you won't get those people onto your team. So we've really focused. I was head of services before the CEO job, and one of my big pieces that I did was our diversity and inclusion programme and more complex hiring to ensure that our staff team really reflects the community of Ireland, not even just the community we're working for, the actual world we live in. And we do now. And that makes it much easier to reach diverse groups of clients. For somebody who's trying to access a service, I know myself as a woman in my 40s, if I needed help from a service, I would look towards a service that had staff who looked and felt like me. And that's true for all of our clients. So it's important that our team reflects them. We've got staff with different language skills. We have fantastic Ukrainian worker, Polish workers. We've got workers with lived experience of homelessness. We've got workers with lived experience of domestic violence. And while they don't just go out there and share all of their lived experiences, they're careful about it. They have a greater empathy and ability to engage with people who probably are not sure whether they're willing to engage with our service yet, But traversing the systems can be, I suppose, in the times we live in where there is a rise of the right, which will hopefully peter out, and people aren't necessarily overly empathic towards people who they perceive as immigrants, even though a lot of black and brown people in Ireland are absolutely not immigrants, they're Irish. It can lead us to having to just protect ourselves a little bit more from external threats and mind our staff while they're out on the street doing their work. We worked during the first wave of the Ukraine war. We worked in the HSE very kindly supported us and asked us to work in direct provision centres supporting health screening. And it was difficult because there were protests going on outside the health centres and our staff were having to walk through big crowds of angry, frustrated people who were violent and worked their way into that centre to support people with their health needs. And, some of our staff have come through direct provision themselves. So it's hurtful on a personal level as well as dangerous on a professional level. So Ana Liffey just has to risk assess and put all of our procedures and supports in place to really take care of our people, to make sure they're safe in doing that.
To those angry people outside those buildings shouting and roaring, and the motivation, it kind of bends your head, really. Let's assume and be kind that some people are in fear of all of these weird, different people, be it a drogie or someone that looks a little bit different to you and I. What would you say to them? Because you've been dealing with these people who are different or look different to us.
We live on a globe, and everyone really would have a better life if they felt like a global citizen, I suppose. I'm very proud to be Irish. I love Ireland. One of my highlights of the year is my Damien Dempsey gig in Vicar Street. I can't get more Dublin than that, but I'm a global citizen, and we have to respect that there will be movement between countries. We have to respect that poverty and trauma and mental health has always existed in the world, and unfortunately always will exist on some level. And, addiction is a consequence of those things. So I think starting from a place of recognizing that it's not hopeless, there is an awful lot of hope, but hope does not equal the eradication of addiction and war and migration. It's not going back to some place that you think we've come from where the world was perfect. There's always been drug use in society. There's always been mental health. And a lot of those people would have ended up in St.Lukes and Clonmel because their families would have not been able to cope with them and signed them into a psychiatric hospital, which was not the right place for them to be. So it's not going away. Things can get better, people can get better, but social harms and the difficulties of being a human in the world aren't going away, and waving a banner or protesting at it isn't going to help. But I would also say that people need to use their votes wisely. It is the government's responsibility to take care of all citizens in the country to the best level where there isn't division being caused, because people are feeling hard done by, they're struggling to live in their own lives, they're squeezed, they can't get jobs, they can't get accommodation, so their empathy falls apart for people who are struggling even more than them. So we also need to vote for the government that we really feel can help our country move forward to serve everybody equally. That's a more positive action, I think, than protesting outside a unit where you've got women who are struggling because they have left their kids back in their war-torn country and they've escaped with their baby and they don't know where their husband is. That's who you're waving banners at and shouting at through the windows,
Yeah, at a human level, just think a little bit about the real people who are inside those four walls. So as the CEO of Ana Liffey, you're in charge now. You have the keys, Dawn. All those things you were pushing hard to do when you were coming up the ranks, all those things you wanted to change. And I know you're stamping your ideas on a lot of things. So what else do you want to do? Where do you see the organisation going? What would you like to do?
Yeah, my key goal over the next couple of years is two-pronged. So one is to reach different types of people with our supports. Kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier, Greg, there are other social harms happening in other parts of our community and in Ireland that Ana Liffey can support with. So people who are struggling with mental health or addiction in their homes, maybe in communities where there aren't social services, maybe none of their peers have these issues and they don't know where to reach out to. Maybe they're ashamed, they have to hide it from their job, they're working full time, they're struggling with a family. We are for them. So I want to work harder to reach those people. And also to reach into communities of people who use drugs in different ways, but equally can experience harm. So people who use drugs in a social scene or in a festival scene or for chemsex, which I think a lot of followers will know what it is, but it's engaging with drug use to make your sex more enjoyable. And all of those things can all go well for a lot of people, but harms can come up in those settings as well. And Ana Liffey can do a lot of work to support those people, reduce harm and receive treatment if they need to. So I want to work harder to reach those people. And the other real focus for me for the next couple of years is building up our peer work program. So we recognise that before people fully recover, they can still work. and they can still do important jobs. And a part of their value is their lived experience. So in Ana Liffey, at times, we pay our current clients to do pieces of work alongside us. For example, outreach. So somebody who's using our service, we will pay them to come on outreach with us and help us engage with people who don't trust us and don't want to engage with us. So I want to build up that program, because we've seen even in the early, there's a fantastic woman, Leah, who leads it in the Ana Liffey. She's absolutely brilliant. And she's worked with a couple of our early peer workers to get them on the road to employment through Ana Liffey. And we've already seen fantastic outcomes. A couple of our peer workers have now gone through college and are now paid staff in different organisations, including ours, in full-time employment, like I started when I was 22. So that's recovery capital as well. You can't just passively wish people towards recovery. You have to hand them some building blocks, and paid employment is really one of those.
Wow, you'll be busy.
We'll be busy, but I have a great team of people, a great team of hard-working people around the country who all push us forward.
What's happiness to you, Dawn?
Peace and excitement. Peace and excitement. Having enough kind of peace where everything's okay, everyone is okay as they can be, and just always something to look forward to, Greg. The next challenge, the next event, the next challenge, the next problem to solve. Just being busy, really.
Yeah, I actually love that definition of happiness. I'm on 360 odd episodes, and I ask that question of everyone. And a lot of the times people talk about this lovely state about peace and contentment and all that kind of thing. But you need that little bit of agitation, don't you? You need
you do.
You need your Foo Fighter moment. You need to get the blood flowing.
You know you're alive. I still... My colleagues here still joke with me that I love a crisis, and I don't. But I kind of come alive during, say, there's a global pandemic outbreak. That was obviously a horrific experience for the globe, but there was part of me that was like, that adrenaline is flowing now. Those endorphins are flowing. There's a big problem to fix.
Yeah, it's like, okay, have you noticed Dawn is really excited by this?
He's on it. The post-it notes, an outbreak of something here or there. And look, I mean, it's just about getting up, getting active, living your purpose. Peace is important, but you only get one go. I don't want to sit around too zen, leave an impact, smash some ceilings.
Yeah. Okay. So you probably answered this question. I ask people, what does winning look like for you? What are those moments when, if you're playing football, the ball hits the back of the net and yes, I did it. I've been working hard towards this. What are your ball hitting the back of the net moments?
When I hear other people, either in the organisation or in my life, repeating back to me things that I've been trying to teach them. Not that I am the all-being, all-knowing teacher. Lots of people taught me. But when I can hear the staff say things or work in ways that I know I planted the seed. And that's winning for me. It's all about multiplicity, empowering other people to be able to do the work. And then they add their own special secret skills and sauce that makes it way better than you would have ever done it. But I do get great joy of seeing where my mentoring and coaching has helped people get to where they are and then fly way above me and fly off and be better. But yeah, I think that team development and coaching and mentoring. And I really do enjoy supporting people on our teams as well who mightn't have that belief in themselves, maybe because of their gender, or maybe because of their background or their ethnic identity, and they may not feel that they should put themselves forward for promotion. But that belief in people's potential, that's relevant to our staff team as well. And I do like kind of supporting people to believe in themselves the way Rose and lots of people help me do that.
I've one last question for you, and it's a question I've never asked anyone before.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. You have huge experience of working with people who have lost all hope. They're in extremely dark places where there's no brightness anywhere. And everything looks like total shit. And I know from talking to you, family members and everything else have abandoned them and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They've been given a chance by some employer somewhere, and Johnny or Mary hasn't turned up 3 days in a row, and it's like, enough is enough. I'm running a business. I'm sorry. I tried to help you, but forget about it.
Yeah.
So we're at the very bottom. Our lives have unraveled. For anyone who's in those dark places and not necessarily the types of clients that you meet where you see obvious evidence of that, they're homeless, but they're in the darkest of places. What would you say to anyone like that from your experience? Because I know you've dealt with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. 5,000 a year is what you're saying in terms of clients. What would you say to someone to start on a path that changes all of that?
First of all, there absolutely is a way out. There genuinely is. And I really know that and believe it from over the years of my own life and working in Ana Liffey. Even if you can't see the exit sign, there is one. You just can't see it yet. You haven't found the right person to show you it. Don't get overwhelmed with the end goal. Don't get overwhelmed with everything being sorted. Take the first step, just the one first step. The small thing that you're going to do that's going to get you connected to the people who are going to help you. Whether that is talking to your GP or talking to a friend or looking up the Ana Liffey website or looking up the HSE website and calling. We have a free phone number, so does the HSE. Just start with the first step and trust that you won't give up on yourself and you'll take the second and third. But really, I know it's cliched, but you can't eat the elephant in one bite. You need to let go of the big picture of where you want to be and start with the first step. But also, I respect, and I would say this to anyone who's listening who feels like that, and any of our clients, I do respect and acknowledge that it can feel hopeless and that there is no way out. And anytime I'm talking to somebody in the Ana Liffey or someone who wants to use our service who says, I'm just thinking about ending it all. I'm thinking there's no way out and I can't see a future. You have to sit with people in that because that's a real feeling, and you have to recognise and respect that for some people there is no light. And to them I would say, will you just give me till tomorrow or this afternoon? Will you meet me for a coffee this afternoon? Will you meet me tomorrow? And by tomorrow, there will be one first step. There'll be something that we can do together. And just give me the next 24 hours. And just take it tiny bit by tiny bit, because it can get massively overwhelming and desperate for people. And we need to know that about the people who are living beside us or beside us on the bus as well. There's people who are on a knife edge sometimes and they mightn't have it tomorrow. And all I'd ask of them is 24 more hours. And we'll see where we are then.
Dawn, you are phenomenal. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And a bit of a shout out to Martin in Clonmel.
Oh, yeah.
He did a good job. Yeah. To your mum for including you in her life and experiencing things that she thought it's not the worst thing in the world for Dawn to see some of these things. To your lad, Alan, who tried to show you a different picture of the world as well. And that woman, was it Rose you said?
Rose
nudged you to, you need to apply for this job, sunshine. They could do with you. And thank you for doing that work, for, seeing the very, very best in people and making that more than a throwaway comment or whatever, but making it real for people and showing them that there is a way. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks a million.
Yeah, you're so welcome. We will see you again soon. Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.